Well, my name is Coach Lee Gray with Action Coach Business Coaching, and I have the CEO, Dick Groves, of a public relations and community company called Inc. Public Relations. And I'm very excited to have you as a guest today to be interviewed. Before the interview actually started, I learned that you've lived in some of the greatest cities in the world, including Chicago, San Francisco, New York City, and now Lawrence, Kansas. So you'll have to tell us how you came to be back into Lawrence after all those fascinating places. Why don't you answer that?
Well, and very quickly, when I graduated with my master's degree from Lawrence, from KU, I had been told that if you were going to make it in PR and advertising, you had to have New York experience on your resume. So I decided not to wait, but I went and literally pounded the pavement in New York City. And fortuitously, I landed a job with probably the third largest PR firm at the time, which was great training for me. A little scary. At the time, I was married with a 6-month-old baby and 2 German shepherds and a cat, and moving from being a student at KU to working on in Manhattan, California was a bit frightening. But from there, and it was great training. From there, I went on a leave of absence from that firm to work for one of their clients in Michigan. From there, I transferred into the Chicago office of that firm. And from there, I switched over to a large ad agency in Chicago to get advertising experience on a major scale. And then, and from that, I went out to California and went to the corporate side and worked for a corporation. And that's kind of the way it all started. And eventually I ended up going back to that firm that I was started with in New York in the mid 80s to run their Southern California operation. And from there, I said, I've had enough. I'd worked for big corporations. I'd worked for big public relations and advertising agencies, and I wanted to do my own thing. So I started my own company, and with a little bit different twist to it. And I started that in the Bay Area of California. And then after a few years, I moved it back to the Midwest, where I decided I wanted to come home, so to speak.
Okay. So the company that you started 30 years ago is this company, PR?
This company, yes.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment. And you've got a decent sized team today, and you're still doing public relations type and communications. Are you still doing any kind of advertising work, or mainly?
No. We were strictly
PR.
public relations.
Okay.
We're strictly a publicity company. Public relations. One of the things I was rebelling against back 30 years ago was the idea that even PR had become more consulting than it had landing good media coverage for the clients, which is what I was trained in the beginning, and I wanted to get back to it. So I started a company. My company was designed to go after media coverage first and foremost. Good old traditional print broadcast, now online, podcasts, etc. But basically, we're a publicity company. Clients come to us in order to gain what's called now earned media coverage versus paid media coverage, which means we have to go earn the right for our clients, for their editorial side, to do stories about our clients. We don't pay the media to do them. The clients don't pay the media to do them. That's why it's called earned media in today's jargon.
Okay.
Paid media, digital marketing and advertising and etc. So
you have to throw money
my
at
back both.
I was just going to say, you have to throw money at it, but in a different way.
Well, it's a different form of payment. We're paid certainly,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
paid,
Yeah.
we're paid to come up with a creative way that the media will give a damn
Mhm.
about stories that we're pitching them for
Right.
our clients. So,
Mhm. So, this wasn't a question I was prepared to ask you, but I just, what do you find, what's a memorable PR experience you would share with this audience that is someone like yourself that's seen a lot? What do you find is a good PR exposure or event, if you will? Is it an event or is it
well, I mean, over 30 years, we've had a lot of experiences and done a lot of things for different clients. I mean, certainly most recently, we've had clients that we've been able to, even on a local Kansas City basis, where we've been able to publicize a 100-year-old school that's been converted into apartments. And that was been kind of fun. On a bigger, grander scale, I like to use the example back in the early 90s when I was called by the United Jewish Appeal. And they wanted us to work on a campaign. They wanted us to help publicize the fact that Jews in the former Soviet Union were being persecuted and needed to be transferred. The ones that could go needed to be transferred and head into Tel Aviv and into Israel, the diaspora, so to speak. And it was like a second coming of the Exodus. And we were enlisted to work on that. Literally, I went over to Russia, I went over to Israel and so forth, and we dug and hunt and found the story hooks that we then brought back to the United States and convinced the US media to do stories on that and help them raise money in order to continue that process. That was one that I particularly was satisfying because you could say we were wearing white hats and doing that. I've worked for celebrities, although we won't work for celebrities much anymore because celebrity PR tends to be more ego driven,
Uh-huh.
uh, and frankly doesn't pay as good as corporate PR does.
Mm.
So we've tended to shy away from that because in all honesty, celebrities can be a pain in the ass in terms of trying to deal with them on a daily basis. So
Oh, I'm
uh,
sure of
we
that.
don't. So we tend to work for smaller to medium-sized companies or organizations that need to get their story out. That's what we're hired to do. We're hired to get the story out.
What I especially liked, what you said was, well, that event that you you publicized that you were hired to do PR for was not a commercial event. It was a story that needed to be told, however. So anything that's even in politics, or if we know about it, there's some kind of PR behind it.
Well, often that's the case. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it is. Most of the stories you see in the Wall Street Journal or the USA Today or the New York Times or Fortune magazine, many of them are what would be called pitch stories to the media. The media, particularly as it's shrunk over the years, does not have the editorial staff anymore to
Mm-hmm.
be constantly looking. That doesn't mean that the media doesn't do the story, write the story, broadcast the story. They do, but we bring them the ideas, help bring them what need they to do to make their story complete. A good example is a company that we work for that hires, and it is a for-profit company that hires artists that cannot use their feet, that only can use their feet or mouths to paint. And that's because they're almost all quadriplegics. So given that, when that's the case, we put together a story for CBS Sunday Morning and how this company hires them. They do Christmas cards, they do calendars, they do a lot of things. They're paid a very good salary to do it. It's not a charity, but CBS Sunday Morning, it took almost a year for us working with CBS Sunday Morning News to develop the story, get it put together, and so forth. They did the work. They did the broadcast. We're the behind the scenes to help make it happen.
Right. I think that's really fascinating. So the industry you've been in for a while, what's been the biggest learning curve since you've been in the industry?
The biggest learning curve?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not sure. We certainly have learned as we go. I would say probably that we have to adapt constantly to the changing media. I mean, it's different from 5 years ago. It's certainly different from 30 years ago. I
Yeah.
mean, the internet wasn't even a thought 30 years ago when we started this. So everything is online now, and
Yeah.
much of it are podcasts and influencers as opposed to traditional media now. So we've had to learn to adapt to that, and that's certainly a change over the years that we've had to adapt to.
Mm-hmm.
But it still comes down to whether something is a good story, and secondly, whether it's newsworthy. Because even yourself don't want to have a guest that isn't going to be newsworthy.
Right. Exactly.
And certainly the Wall Street Journal doesn't want to do a story unless it's newsworthy. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to do something because somebody knows somebody at the Wall Street Journal. They're going to do a story because it satisfies their readership that they have. And when their readership is satisfied, then they get to sell ads. So,
Right.
but ultimately it comes down to our job is we're in the news business. That's another way of saying it. We have to constantly feed good newsworthy stories to the media so that they will run them and do them and produce them.
I feel like your industry almost tells us what we should be interested in because
Well,
you're out
not
there.
really. I mean, I wish that was the case sometimes, but it's not.
Okay.
I mean, you decide as a reader, as a viewer, what you want to see, and it's a misconception that PR somehow is guiding your thoughts and views. That's BS.
Oh,
But
okay.
it really is. What we do is we will work off of what the media needs and wants. That makes such a big difference.
Mm,
Many PR companies work with clients and they say, okay, here, put out a press release. We want to say this about our company, our product, whatever it is. And the media gets the press release and goes, why do I want to do this? There's no news in this. You might as well take out an ad if you want to do that. If you want the news side, the editorial side to do a story, it's got to be something that's of value to the reader. So therefore, we actually call it, we're media centric more than we're client centric, which is,
okay.
but we're guided by what the media is looking for and needs and not what we want to shove down their throat. That's a horrible misconception of the PR business that somehow we're we're determining what people think, want, buy, etc. Now, I can't speak necessarily for the advertising industry because they have much more control over where they run something, how often they run an ad or a commercial, what they're saying to it. Uh, but that's not what public relations is, not in the slightest.
I think that's a good explanation, and it it makes a lot of sense the way you describe it. So is that one of the biggest misconceptions or misunderstandings about the public relations industry then, is that it's
Well, that's certainly one of
Mhm.
them. Another one is it's all about contacts. It's all about who you know in the media. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times clients have come to us or prospects have come to us and says, how many people do you know at the Wall Street Journal or at USA Today or CBS? I want to hire somebody that knows somebody there so they can get my story run. And I have to say, that's ridiculous. Do we know people? Of course, we've been in the business 30 years. Will that make one iota of difference? No, absolutely not. Again, I'm going to stress it's what the news, is it newsworthy?
Mhm.
Somebody's wife who might be the managing editor of, let's say, the New York Times or USA Today, and their husband brings them a story, brings her a story and says, I'd like to have you run this story because after all, we're married, we sleep together. Couldn't be a better relationship than that, for God's sake. Okay. And that person says, no,
Right.
not unless it's, you want me to lose my job?
Mm-hmm.
It's got to have some news to it. It's got to have something to reason my audience. So one of the great misconception is it's who you know in the business that makes you a valuable PR person. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And yet
Interesting.
I hear it every single day. And the people we hire that work for us, I don't care that much who they know. I care about whether they have what I call good news instincts. Are they news junkies? Do they know how to look at a story, a company, a person, and how can they find that interesting little news hook that's going to make the media interested enough to want to do a story on it? That's what I look for. Far more valuable than who you know at some magazine, newspaper.
So how do you feel about, or what would you want to say about the media outlets that maybe are not always truthful? And I'm talking about some very far right, some far left. That was definitely not one of my questions. I'd love to know your thoughts about that, and how is non-confirmed media and PR that's infiltrating our mainstream, how is that having an impact? What kind of an impact does that have on your industry, I guess?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by non-confirmed media.
I guess what I mean by that is,
I want to say, we know how to pitch a story to certain people. I mean, Fox News leans right, you
yeah,
know, they're pro-Trump, they lean right. You look at any show on Fox and listen to it, you get the emphasis. So do we pitch a story that might have more, be interpreted more as a liberal or politically? No, you don't go there. You go there with stories that they're going to be one that their readership is going to want to hear about.
okay.
Uh, most of those clients don't work with us, to be honest with you. Okay, but you know how to deal with different kinds of media. But I don't think I'm naive when I say that it's a big misconception in this country that the media is left or right leaning. If they are, it's well known and produced as such for their audience. MSNBC is liberal leaning. Fox is right. The Wall Street Journal tends to be a little more conservative in its approach, but nevertheless, it's very honest. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not a big fan of people thinking that this whole thing about fake news and all of that, we don't deal with it. We deal with the media that if you want an honest, good story and so forth. So I'm not sure how to answer your question when you say non-confirmed media. I'm not sure what that is, but we're certainly not naive. But we also, been in this business a long time.
Right.
And say without a doubt, 99% of the media that is out there that we deal with are honestly looking for stories. Yes, they want them stories that will satisfy their readership and look for that, but they're basically honest in how they deal with it and approach it.
That's refreshing to hear that. So you came to start your business and you became an entrepreneur. You've always been an entrepreneur. Tell me about how entrepreneurialness or ism has been different for you than being corporate or being part of the, getting a paycheck, because now you're responsible for your paycheck and everyone else's. So tell me a little bit about what that's been like to be an entrepreneur, because you've been doing it a while.
Well, I have been, and I came out of the world of big PR,
Mm-hmm.
big corporations and big, I mean, whether it was a corporation that ran the PR or whether, you know, I'm not one that works well with a boss that hovers. Okay. Uh, that's putting it politely. There are certain people that are inclined more to say, I need to do this on my own, whether I fail or not, but I need to do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I always lean toward that. Uh, it's it's frightening at times, but I don't condemn my brothers and sisters that have stayed within the bigger PR
Mm-hmm.
firms and the bigger corporations. That satisfies them, and that's fine. I just happen to be a person that likes to be. I like to be in charge. I like to make my own mistakes. I recognize that you're going to have to be. There are consequences to being an entrepreneur, and but there are very much satisfying. You're not as, entrepreneurs today tend to be thought of as multi-billionaire kids from Stanford that suddenly formed a company and now they're worth all this money. Oh, that's the quote. But there are millions of us that start our own small business, do it well. It could be a laundromat in Poughkeepsie, or it could be a PR firm in the Bay Area or or Kansas City.
Yeah.
But there are millions of us that are just running and building small businesses, and that have nothing to do with whether we ever went to Stanford, whether we'll have developed the world's newest next big thing on an app, or that we're trying to go for an IPO and become billionaires. Uh, I I find I find it incredibly satisfying to work with other entrepreneurs. That's another thing I like. I love finding out from people how they created a business where they could get somebody to write them a check for whatever they do. And I had a friend that once called me that, and he said, "That's a business, by the way, Dick. Uh, yeah, a business is where you get somebody, it's not what you like to do, and it's whether you can get somebody to write a check for what you do. Then you've got a business." And so,
Yeah, that's right. And there are very many very successful business owners with a nice life and raising a family and providing opportunity for all their employees and their families, going about their business quietly day after day after day, because they are like you. They don't want to work for someone else. They want to be their own boss and make their own mistakes. And that is scary. And it isn't for everybody. And thank goodness it isn't.
yeah, the security,
Uh-huh.
is the big paycheck and all of that. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, being an entrepreneur, starting your own business, even after 30 years, it's still scary. I mean, you still, what you hope is you can get far enough ahead where you got 5 or 6 paychecks,
Yeah.
where you're going to be able to
Right.
outlast whatever happens.
Uh-huh.
In this world, the clients come and go.
Oh, I bet.
And so you never know exactly.
Mhm.
You hope you build relationships, but it's not just based on a relationship with the client. It's based on whether they are going through their own trauma and their way of their businesses. It's whether they are no longer finding any kind of newsworthiness about them. There's a lot of different reasons that clients go, and there's a lot of different reasons clients come to you.
Mhm.
But we've been very lucky that being referenced by other clients over the years and so we've been very fortunate. I knock on wood every day that it's not in it 30 years later. I never cease to be amazed that I'm still here, still functioning, and I like to think we're still doing a pretty good job.
I'm sure that you are. Um, so you've been doing this a long time. You've been doing a lot of things right. And that's one thing I know as a business coach. You don't get lucky every day. You have to do something right. How do you start your day?
How do I start my day? Well, as I get older, harder every day to roll out of bed. Uh, but no, before I go to bed at night, I'm a guy that likes to put together a yellow legal pad with a list of my to-dos on it, my phone calls, my meetings and to-dos.
Uh-huh.
And I have a pretty good idea when I go to bed at night what's in store for me. And then personally, from my standpoint, I'm doing more now in the way of just exercising and doing things to get my mind clear. But mornings are my best time. And I've always been a morning person. That doesn't mean I can't hang in late. I don't hang in as late as I used to, but 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 morning is a very productive time usually. So I like to get things moving early in the morning as possible. I like to get my phone calls and my Zoom calls and a lot of other things that these days done. But yeah, my morning is, and around here on first part of the week, we have a staff meeting where we also have a conference call going during our staff meeting with our people that are in the field. So we keep track of what's going on out there, what we're doing, spend a little time on personal business and so on. And but that's the mornings are the most productive.
I think honestly, what you described are some of the things that we coach people to do that make a business successful. That seems like you've decided to do it naturally. You get up in the morning, and first thing you do is write down what you need to get out of your head for the night so it's ready in the morning. That's a hard thing to teach, believe it or not. And if you can't incorporate that, then the brain overtakes your thoughts. You know what I mean? And then having those meetings with your team consistently. You know, after 30 years, you could think, why do we need to have another meeting? Well, you need to have another meeting, right?
Yeah, and they're informal meetings, but I'm never been one for meeting's sake,
Right.
particularly with clients. But I do like, still a person, even though we built our business on remote people, all my people work remote except for a small cadre here in the headquarters. But even though I built my business on remote workers, I still be very much in personal interaction where as possible. I prefer to have a meeting with a client if that's possible. It often isn't these days. Clients, frankly, because of budgets and so forth, prefer to do a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but I still like personal interaction with people, and I think it's most effective. But yeah, I like to be. I am organized but unorganized. I don't know if that means.
Does.
I like to think. Uh, uh, I'm also analog, and if you shift it over to the right, you would see I've got files stacked up everywhere. Uh, my president, who's been with me 20 years, he has no files. He just has yeah, he has a laptop computer. That's what
Right.
but I still like thumbing through things. I like manila files. I like doing all of that stuff. And that's just the I don't know, the Luddite in me, I guess, but I enjoy that part of it. One of the things I do every morning is we get at least 3 newspapers here at the office. I go through each one of those papers first thing I get to the office uh, before anything else, which is because I want to see what's happening. Also, obviously, I look online and I can't help but listen to radio but I like also the in-depth reporting that comes with an actual newspaper in the morning. So I read the Wall Street Journal, I read the New York Times, and I read USA Today. And because it's not just business news, but it's pop culture news as well. I want constantly informed of what's going on out there because that's how we make our living is tying our clients to what's going on out there. And
Okay. Right.
so that's part of the routine every morning. But certainly organizing myself the night before, if you want to call it, it doesn't mean that I'm not adding to it during the day. or I may forget something entirely and go, oh, damn, I forgot all about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my little, yeah, I have, and by the way, I'm a hoarder from this standpoint. I have probably every legal tab I've had for 30 years. I have them stored in boxes. Just simply because that's the history of my days.
Yes,
That's
I
not,
get that.
it's not a journal by
Mhm,
any means, but it's the history of what I've done, and I just have a habit of keeping track of it that way.
mhm. It's not unlike having a hard drive with all of your files you've had over the last years. It's just a different process, you know,
Well, yeah,
and
of
being
course.
able to access it, you may not need it, but it's there if you do.
Yeah, and I'm always getting in trouble because today, email, I mean, I have email, I have almost every email I've ever received. I
Mhm.
mean, multiple thousands of emails stored, you
So do
know? And so if somebody says, well, what did we say to them back in 2012? Let me
let me
look.
tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
there's something to be said about that. So what makes you feel inspired? I mean, you've been doing this a while. You got to be inspired with something. What makes you feel that way?
what makes me feel inspired? Well, human nature, when it works, inspires me, believe it or not. When I hear or see clients in my business, when I see a client doing something that I think is really cool, uh, I love that. I'm inspired by individual people that have certain personality traits that are outgoing and so forth. Uh, I'm I'm inspired when uh, uh, I see new things. uh, I love seeing something brand new that I hadn't thought about. I'm also a sports junkie, so I'm inspired by all the same things sports junkies are. When my teams do well, I'm up. When my
Yeah.
teams don't do well, I'm a bummer. Okay, you
Isn't that
know?
fun? And did you enjoy our women's basketball, college basketball this season? Wasn't that fun to see?
Oh yeah, sure. And
Loved it.
I've been very lucky. I also I'm a motorcycle rider, so I like getting out on my motorcycle, Harley, for many years, and I switched over to a different brand, to an Indian now.
Mm,
Uh, but I still 2 or 3 times a year like to get out with a couple of my old friends from even high school, and will ride the country a little bit, meet new people, experience new things. I think that's terribly important, and I really enjoy it. By the way, that's one of the things that it keeps me. It sounds corny, but most of this country, in spite of the BS that's going on and the bipolar and the polarization and all of that and everything that Trump is currently trying to put down with this country, uh, I found it really inspiring to get out there and talk to real people. I really do. And most times, if you allow them to listen and talk, you can find goodness in almost everything, and you can certainly find inspiration. And one of the nice things, again, about sports and things, it's kind of a homogenizing effect. You know, you can have two people that absolutely hate each other politically, and they could both be Chiefs fans. Okay.
Chiefs. I'm a Chiefs fan.
But
Yeah.
those things that those are the things that inspire me is new faces, new people, new ways of doing things. Uh, and also it's inspiring to see old people still doing well.
Absolutely. Because
I
what's
love I love the stories of somebody in their 70s or 80s that are out there doing well. I love the stories of old jocks that are still performing well at some age. I mean, that's, and particularly as I get older, obviously that's even more important to me to see that,
Mhm.
being able to relate to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think as I'm getting older too, I realize that you can get old or you can just get older. It doesn't have to be both. And I was just thinking, my in-laws in their 80s, they trekked from Kansas and they to Alaska. They did it 5 different times. Didn't bat an eye that it was that the age that they were at all, because even though they were physically in their 80s, they were not in their 80s. They were not old.
Right.
And
Well, let's hope.
let's hope, right?
Well, I turn 80 this year, so.
Oh, congratulations. You have or you will?
Oh, no, I will.
Okay.
In September, so.
Okay. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you, I guess.
Yes. Well, do you have a favorite book that you like? I always ask people that I interview that because I think people are always interested in maybe having a look at a book that inspired someone like yourself.
Well, I, there are many books that I've read that I find, if you want to find inspirational, I love historical books. I love books about historical characters. Uh, uh, what's her name? Kearns Goodwin, who wrote Team of Rivals. That's a great book if you never read it, in terms of how to work together and how the classic work of people that can't stand each other and how Lincoln was able to get them to work together for the common good. Amazing, amazing book. But there's many books that I like, and many films that I like, but most of the films I like are basically classic movies from the past, but and that I wrote my own book a couple of years ago. So
what's the title of your book?
The title is, and no surprise considering what I just told you, the title is "It's the Media, Stupid." PR without the BS.
Love
And
it.
it's a look back over 50 years full of anecdotes and basically how to find the news hook in almost any company or person that's looking to try and land publicity. How does one go about getting the media interested in doing a story? And that's what the book's about, telling, in effect, anecdotal stories of clients that I've worked with over the years.
Okay. That's great for people to know that. And I think after the interview, they'll go, I kind of know that guy. I want to get his book, because people will feel a little more like they know you. That's how I'm always more interested in getting a book if I've met the author. It's even better when I can have them sign it. So the next time when I'm in Lawrence,
Okay,
I'll get your signature.
let me know.
Okay. So when it's all said and done, what do you want people to remember most about you?
Oh my goodness.
I know.
That sounds kind of final,
Doesn't it?
So, looking back.
Looking back.
No. I I have two corny sayings that I have actually tried to model myself after. Okay. One was, I believe, attributed to Spencer Tracy years and years ago, talking to a young actor. And what he said was, when asked for advice, he said, take your job very seriously, but never yourself. And that was certainly one. And then one of my absolute heroes that I actually worked for more years ago than you would like to think, came from Bobby Kennedy. And it was attributed to someone else, obviously, but what he said, and was a famous line from his campaign, what he said is, and I have it hanging above my desk here, which is, some people see things as they are and say why. Other men see things that never were and say why not.
I've heard that too. Yeah, that is beautiful.
So, and believe it or not, two things I've tried to pretty much live by. So
I love those. Thank you for sharing that. I'll probably put those in my hook when I do my social media post about you. Can't help myself. So if people want to find you, they can get your book on Amazon, right?
They can get the books on Amazon. You can certainly find me on the website. I'm
Okay.
on LinkedIn, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But the website is www.inkpr.com, inkinkpr.com. And like I said, but you can certainly find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on our website, and you can find the book on Amazon.com.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get some more books sold for you. Can't hurt, right?
I'm not that worried about it.
I know,
It wasn't meant to be War and Peace. It wasn't meant to be it's kind of a fun look back over 50 years.
I have not read it, so I will have to get it. I haven't interviewed anyone in a while that's written a book, so that's kind of good to know. I'm going to go ahead.
Actually, if you ever get to Lawrence, I think Raven has a copy of it, or has a copy of it. The KU bookstore has copies of it as well. So
I'm a local guy there, they would have to.
yeah,
Well,
right.
thank you for your time today for the interview. I appreciate, I feel I feel pretty honored that I got to interview you today, Dick Groves, CEO of Inc PR, and it's INK PR, and that's how you can be found on the web. Plus, you're on LinkedIn. I'm Coach Lee with Action Coach Business Coaching, and I'm located in Wichita, Kansas. And this is the Business Spotlight interview.